Welcome, class. Today, we examine a military force that redefines the very concept of a soldier. The Crucible Guard doesn't just train warriors, they forge alchemists of war. Their methods are brutal, their standards are unforgiving, and their tactics are utterly ruthless. By the end of this lecture, you will understand why they are one of the most formidable and feared forces in the Iron Kingdoms. Also, before we begin, if you would be so kind, if you are enjoying our long-form lectures, please hit that like button, subscribe to not miss any new content, and please share with your friends. We love new students, and without further ado, let's begin training of the Crucible Guard. The majority of Crucible Guard soldiers are already veteran campaigners, thanks to extensive recruitment of former mercenaries and soldiers. The training regimen therefore focuses on the specifics of working with the advanced weapons and equipment developed and manufactured by Crucible Arms. The Guard employs an accelerated 2-week basic training course. Unlike other militaries, this training is designed less to instill basic discipline and physical fitness than to determine the suitability of a candidate for the tasks required in the Guard. The organization does not have time to teach young farmhands to be soldiers, preferring instead to rely on experience earned through basic training in other military or mercenary services. Those recruits who prove to be too far behind the Crucible Guard's expectations are washed out at this stage. After basic training and evaluation, the true instruction begins. Several weeks of training and drilling with weapons and armor follow, during which fresh recruits break into training battalions for the remainder of their instruction. Promising soldiers are given temporary positions in leadership roles in order to determine those best suited for non-commissioned officer status. One aspect of training unique to the Crucible Guard is the emphasis on mastering the fundamentals of field alchemy. The vast majority of Crucible Guard armament relies in part or in whole on alchemical weapons developed by the Order of the Golden Crucible. Soldiers must learn how to deal with unplanned alchemical reactions, how to treat exposure to a range of harmful substances, and how to counteract the effects of weapons as diverse as burning oil, corrosive acids, and the psychoactive fear gas grenades carried by a select few. Not every soldier is capable of mastering these aspects of the work with the diligence required to ensure general safety for all, and failure in this battery of instruction is one of the primary reasons soldiers fail to pass their training. Those who fail can apply for further instruction if their drill instructors consider them otherwise worthy candidates, and individuals with rare or valuable skills are often given special dispensation. In fact, some notable warcasters affiliated with the Crucible Guard have no interest in alchemy at all, but their talents are in enough demand that the army is willing to cut them some slack. In these cases, competence in performing alchemy is less important than the ability to safely use the specialized weapons, gear, and other tools expected of everyone serving in the Guard. After completing training, most recruits are assigned to Crucible Guard infantry divisions. Soldiers can apply for openings in other roles, such as the heavy infantry or rocketmen, up to 4 times a year. Those who qualify for consideration receive specialist training tailored to the new role. Those who fail are returned to their original units and can try again after a 3-month cooling-off period during which they are expected to prepare for any subsequent attempts. By the time Crucible Guard soldiers participate in their first battle, they are thoroughly versed in the operation and maintenance of their equipment. This preparation is critical to their success, because the complex tools the Crucible Guard employs are more prone to failure than simpler alternatives. The trade-off is considered worthwhile, as it allows the Guard to effectively engage a wider assortment of opposition. But between battles, soldiers must perform extensive maintenance on nearly every item in their possession. As the Crucible Guard's campaigns extend in length, soldiers learn from veteran associates the most efficient ways to maintain and modify their tools. And as you can see, class, the Crucible Guard themselves don't have mandatory recruitments at a young age like Kador's Winter Guard. They recruit from those who have already been in the battlefield. I imagine that decreases training time significantly and really focuses on the specialized training they are known for. If you are enjoying these courses so far, please hit that like button and comment on your favorite training technique of any army in the Iron Kingdoms or beyond. The class would love to hear your insights. But before we go, let's talk about another aspect of the Crucible Guard. Let's discuss their tactics. In the recent conflicts, the Crucible Guard has benefited from arrangements made with Signaran generals to facilitate supply lines and access to the battlefields of Lael. From Northgard, they have access to the Laelese interior, where they can rendezvous with their military and Laelese resistance allies to contribute to efforts underway in Lael's interior, such as the Siege of Merewyn. Often the Crucible Guard's soldiers must move parallel to Signaran troop movements, while remaining a distinct and separate entity. There is little cohesion between the two armies, and each has their own strategic objectives. Guard commanders have been warned against considering any alliance as permanent. The Guard concerns itself mainly with the reclamation of vital logistical facilities from Kadoran hands, and much less with liberating individual Laelese towns or facilitating Signar's larger agendas in the region. There are a number of former Laelese members of the Guard who are suspicious of the Cygnus. They do not seek to trade one conquering army for another. When battle is joined, the Crucible Guard strives to avoid prolonged engagement. Rather, they rely on surgical operations, striking to displace opposing forces as quickly as possible. Unwilling to weather a counterattack, the Guard's smaller strike forces withdraw, often luring the enemy into the range of another force's artillery. Faced with the prospect of allowing the strike force to escape, or pursuing and falling victim to a hail of Dragon's Breath rockets, most commanders opt for the former. When strategy requires Crucible Guard forces to take and hold a position, they rely heavily on deception, asymmetric warfare, and unconventional, some might say unethical, tactics. Combat alchemists rig structures the opposition is likely to garrison with alchemical booby traps, poison wells, and other lethal hazards. Infantries take positions with clear lines of sight, with orders to snipe the officers of the opposing force, or to focus fire on medical personnel, ammunition porters, and jack marshals. If an enemy overrun of an infantry position seems likely, the troops are under orders to fall back to a skirmish line of heavy troopers, who establish kill boxes in choked city streets. While many opponents have begun to adapt to this method of warfare, the Guard's strategists frequently adjust their tactics. By the time intel on the current techniques have reached enemy command, the Crucible Guard is likely to have added another element to their bag of tricks, like flying rocketmen high over the battlefield, ready to drop gravity bombs when the enemy moves into prepared defensive positions, or deploying railless interceptors at critical street junctions to block movement and gun down infantry. When faced with overwhelming opposition, the Crucible Guard does not hesitate to employ scorched earth tactics. Saturation barraging of caustic dragon's breath rockets and non-stop bombing runs by Rocketman units hammer the field, while warjacks and alchemists poisoned the air with deadly alchemical gas. The Guard's rank and file is protected against such concentrations of deadly atmosphere, but few other armies can outfit their entire force with comparable equipment. Once the majority of enemy infantry lies choking to death on the deadliest of the Golden Crucible's innovations, the Guard advances to put to death any survivors in a methodic cleanup action. To avoid needless carnage and antagonizing potential allies, this last tactic is reserved for only the direst circumstances. Not only is the possibility for unintended casualties high, as shifting winds can carry toxic gases far from the original battlefield, but such warfare is considered vile and contemptible by nearly every other military organization in the Ironkingdoms. And so, class, we have come to learn that an army such as the Crucible Guard, with all that alchemical warfare, has very variable tactics that can be seen negatively by other armies. That would explain why it's an uneasy alliance with the nations of Signar and Lael as a whole. They have alternative objectives in their alliance. If you enjoy that little insight onto their semi-lack of morality to get their objectives, please hit that like button. And if you have interesting ways you would use their unique alchemical reactions in combat in the Ironkingdoms, please let us know below. But before we leave, let's get a full view of the life in the Guard. The identity of the Crucible Guard is undergoing a gradual transformation. Senior members of the organization, more accustomed to simple guard and escort duty, must adapt to the Crucible Guard's new role as an active military power. Along with this growth comes the initiation of new and younger members, as well as battle-tested commanders from outside the organization. Amid the trials of warfare, bonds are formed and broken, and theories are put to the test, and either rejected or embraced. For now, many of the Guard's members are content to focus on surviving the battle before them, allowing others to worry about the battles to come. Among the most seasoned and battle-scarred of the Guard's veterans are those who fought in the Laelis War. While the Guard had existed in multiple nations, wherever a Crucible branch office was located, for most members, it was relatively simple and easy work protecting alchemists and their wares. But in the midst of the Laelis War, the Guard was on the front lines, actively fighting against the invaders, and it was this tenacious defense that prompted the Khadorans to take extreme measures to root them out. A large number of Lael's Guard members died in this action, particularly in the final subversive attack on the Thunderhead Fortress, after a traitor let the Khadorans inside. The surviving members of the Old Guard managed to flee Lael alongside those Laelis alchemists who made it out. They escaped the attacking Khadorans in small groups, each with little idea how many others managed to evade death. As refugees, they sought out safety, moving under cover of darkness and fighting as needed to avoid capture. This dark and uncertain time scarred those who endured it. Many of them lost friends and family in the Khadoran invasion, and bear bitter grudges to this day. These soldiers are often those promoted to positions of authority, which in turn allows their conviction and eagerness for vengeance to influence the units they command. Soldiers found insufficiently eager to bring harm to the Crucible Guard's opponents can expect a private audience with their commanding officer, where harsh truths are revealed. Since the onset of war, the Crucible Guard has lived life on the march, while the lands of Lael conceal many potential allies and sympathizers to their cause. The majority of Guard operations occur far from the safety of the Order's new home in Midfast. Armies must secure positions wherever possible, spreading an ever-widening net over occupied Lael. This campaign offers little opportunity for rest or recuperation. Being deprived of sleep and on the brink of exhaustion is not uncommon, though these conditions are kept at bay by the regular consumption of alchemical stimulants. When an opportunity to cease marching or fighting does arise, the soldiers make the most of it. Catching up on lost sleep is a treasured luxury, often enjoyed in the bowels of a reclaimed Order facility. While some soldiers are allowed a short rest, other elements of the army set up a defensive perimeter and wait for the moment when they will themselves be allowed to lie down for a few consecutive hours. The leadership of the Crucible Guard understands the stress this campaign puts on its infantry and strategically uses pay bonuses to help compensate. Captains are allowed to offer order scrip to soldiers who demonstrate unflagging enthusiasm, which does some good for the tired soldiers' morale. Scrip is often spent on luxury items that the Order trades for, with Ord or Signar sending the soldiers rewards along with the next supply train. Because these items take weeks to arrive, some fail to reach their destination before the soldier has moved on. When this happens, other soldiers often see it as their duty to see that the comfort makes its way to their comrade, carrying items in their personal kit for weeks at a time in the hope of meeting up with other units. When such a meeting occurs, the officers allow for an exchange of items: letters from home, liquor, cigars, fresh garments, and other items flow back and forth between squads, the soldiers all the while swapping stories of their exploits and strategic advice on how best to counter the latest tactics of the enemy. During the campaign in Lael, the Crucible Guard has managed to establish some semi-permanent holdings, usually centered around former laboratories or abandoned branch offices. Using these scattered holdings as forward posts, the Guard recruits volunteers from among the locals. Assignment to the forward posts is a coveted position, providing a better-than-average chance to sleep in comfort, have regular meals, and shelter from the elements. But it is a double-edged sword, as the Crucible Guard's forward posts are priority targets for the enemies of the Order. Each post must stand ready to repel assaults, and attacks can come in many forms. Whether it be waves of Winter Guard and older model warjacks, infiltration attempts by assault commandos, artillery barrages, Doom Reaver attacks, or sharpshooting from teams of Widowmakers, the Guard must be prepared. Some have come to realize that the discomfort of long campaigning is a small price to pay in comparison to waiting forever for the other shoe to drop. Long-term facility protectors are often described as paranoid and twitchy by their fellow soldiers. In light of the pressures and demands put upon active duty soldiery, the Crucible Guard has implemented a policy of forward rotation. Units that have been in the field the longest are cycled back to the headquarters in Ord or to other more remote and safe branches, and they are replaced at the front by the newest batches of recruits. They are encouraged to spend as much of their wages as they can in the taverns, gambling dens, brothels, and entertainment districts of nearby towns during a 6-week cooling-off period. Following what amounts to an all-expenses vacation, soldiers return to the Crucible Guard's facilities to receive training with any new developments in weapons and equipment. The army has learned that units deployed too long in the field rapidly fall behind their counterparts, as minor refinements are constantly made to the equipment and formulae used in battle. Fresh squads of combat alchemists are responsible for carrying out this training. As they teach the veteran soldiers, the thinking goes, the old hands cannot help but impart some battlefield wisdom to their green instructors. And so we see that the Crucible Guard's strength lies not in numbers, but in transformation. They take experienced soldiers and transform them into something new entirely, specialists in alchemical terror and asymmetric warfare. Their identity is still being written in the fires of occupied Lael. The question remains, are they liberators or merely the most efficient mercenaries ever created? The debate is yours to continue. Also, if you enjoyed this and our previous lecture of the Guard's history and hierarchy, please hit that like button, and please share these videos with your fellow Iron Kingdoms lore enthusiast on whatever social media aspect you prefer. We always welcome new and old students. Thank you, and as always, class dismissed.